Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rise Up and Share Your Soul's Medicine podcast. We are here on episode 93, and I'm delighted to talk about today productive rest. This is something that is so important and so misunderstood. So, I really want to clear that up for you because resting productively is one of the things that gives us momentum and the fuel to keep going. So, if it's your first time connecting with me, my name is Lisa Espinosa. I'm a spiritual career coach and priestess. And what I do is I help you and all my clients and students to align with their soul's guidance and take step by step, right? Take the steps that their soul is guiding them to take and share their unique soul's medicine. So let's talk about productive rest. So the biggest challenge in productive rest is, as I said earlier, the misunderstanding that we have. There can be so much resistance to resting productively because there's this fear that you're being lazy, that you're going to fall behind, that you don't have time to rest, that basically it's a waste of time, right? And so when you have those thoughts and those beliefs about rest, and let me back up a little bit. And if you've had, if you grew up with the message that resting was wrong, for example, that really common phrase, right? Don't just sit there, do something. If that was something that you heard a lot, even if it wasn't those words, but said in a different way, you could very well have this very strong belief that, yeah, that resting is wrong, is unproductive, unless you're on vacation or there's some real extreme situation. Even then, you might have trouble resting. So when those beliefs are in your mind, right? And what is a belief? Remember, that's just a sentence that you've repeated in your brain over and over. Then it's very hard for rest to be productive. And so I do want to say there's two paths of rest, right? There's the ego's way of resting, and then there's your soul's way of resting. And when you rest directed by your ego structure, and when I say you, I mean we, right? Like we all have an ego structure. If you're a human, I know you're a divine being having a human experience, but if you're here on the earth plane, then you have an ego structure. I have an ego structure. It's nothing to be ashamed of or feel guilty about. It's just a reality. But we want to become very wise and deciding, well, who do I want to lead the show? Do I want my ego structure to lead the show, or do I want my soul to lead my life, right? And resting under the ego structure's direction can be a couple of things. One, it can be a form of escape, right? And anything that we do to escape something is always going to create more of the thing we're trying to escape, right? So sometimes you might find yourself, quote unquote, resting because of avoiding something to do. So that's not what I'm talking about, right? Like that's just kind of like a strategy. And ultimately, it's not even restful, right? Because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, I got to go do that. I got to go do that. Resting from the ego structure also would look like feeling guilty for resting, right? And I talked about that already, right? Feeling like I should be doing something, I should be productive. This is going to make me fall behind. So there's that way that, our ego structure can really get in the way of rest. The other way that resting can be resting, because I don't even consider that resting, can be hurtful is when we're resting and we overindulge, right? And this isn't in any way meant to be judgmental about what you should do when you rest or not rest, right? That is totally comes from your soul. So if you are resting and you're guided to eat some delicious chocolate, that could be amazing. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't do that. But when the indulgence again comes from a place of trying to cover up emotions, so we can indulge in watching mindless TV or scrolling through social media or eating whatever, or When it's done from a place of, I want to do this because I want to avoid feeling, then that's an issue, right? Because the feelings are still going to be there. So that is resting from the egos. Oh, the other thing I want to share too is, if you're trying to sneak in rest, right? If you're feeling like, if you finally are comfortable enough and you're like, okay, you know, maybe you want to read a book or however you want to rest, but you're just gonna like sneak it in where nobody's looking, and you don't let anybody know, you don't set any boundaries around the time. You just, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do this right now. Nobody's here. I have a little window. And then of course, inevitably somebody interrupts, somebody shows up. And again, that's coming from your ego structure that feels, that somehow judges that resting is wrong. And so those are all, first of all, those are all the problems that get in the way and that actually make resting very unproductive and sometimes even damaging. So, what is productive rest? True productive rest, right? True productive rest comes, first of all, you are meant to rest productively in an ongoing, like regularly. It's not supposed to be that you hustle for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years, and then you get a vacation. That's a really old paradigm that was really created from the ego structure. You are meant to have pockets, windows, times of rest throughout your week, right? Throughout your month. And depending on what cycle of your life you're in, that will look different. Now, I understand that sometimes we're in a cycle of life where things are really, really busy, right? I mean, I'm a mom, my children are all young adults now, but I had 5 children. So I understand that, you know, for some of you, as you're hearing this, you might think, well, I don't have as much time. And that's okay, because your soul will always provide enough time for you to get the productive rest. So, one, it's meant to be regularly. And the other thing is that, what is happening when you're resting productively? Why is it so essential? Resting productively is essential because, one, it allows you to integrate all of the lessons that you've been learning from your soul. So if you received my newsletter last week, I think it was last week, I shared all those prompts for you to reflect on the first 6 months of the year. And your soul is always teaching you lessons, even when you're not aware of it. We are in school. School is in session. We're in divine school, right? In the mystery school of life. And so there's always things you're learning, whether, and I don't mean like you're learning a new language or you're learning a new skill. It might be that. But more than that is, there's some lesson you're mastering, right? I've talked about that before. Maybe you're learning to have more compassion for yourself. Maybe you're learning to have more courage and put yourself out there more. Maybe you're learning to have more trust and faith. Maybe, there was a relationship that ended and you're learning to really grieve that relationship and let it go. Maybe there's new relationships coming into your life and you notice that you're scared and your heart is closing up, but your soul is teaching you how to stay open. I mean, the lessons go on and on and on and on. And then at this point in humanity's evolution, the lessons are coming strongly, right? We're in an accelerated school. And so when you rest, it's a time to integrate. It's a time for those lessons to anchor in. Now, I want to be very clear. I don't mean that you sit there and consciously think, let me integrate my lessons. There's a time for that. But I'm talking about rest where you're truly resting, whatever that means for you, whether that means you're reading a book, you're taking a walk, you're watching a movie you want to watch, you're taking a nap, you're dancing. I mean, like, resting can be whatever it is for you. You're hanging out with a friend. I mean, resting can look different, right? So you're not controlling, you're not holding on to the steering wheel of life saying like, okay, I need to control. You're letting that go so that the integration can happen on its own, right? It's imagine like if you plant a seed in a pot, right? It's gonna be this beautiful flower, and you put water and you put light, maybe you put fertilizer, I don't know, whatever you do. And every day you're taking out the seed to look at it. Is it growing? it's not, let me put it back in. And then you take it out again. Is it growing? And of course, that interrupts the growth, right? Or if you, I have this great picture of this actually. I'll try to find it next time. But if you're baking, right? And I remember I was baking this cake, and all my kids, they were little at the time, 5, they were all kneeling in front of the oven window, just like looking at it because they couldn't wait for the, I think it was cake, maybe it was cookies to come out. Now, if we opened it every 5 seconds and we're like, is this cookie done? We know it would mess it up, but that's what we do with our journey, right? We're like, okay, do I have more courage already? Okay, do I love myself more? Okay, wait, am I on the right path? Okay, wait, like we're constantly doing that. So when you allow yourself to rest, whatever that looks like for you, your soul can do all the behind the scene things it needs to do. You can't control that. In fact, we get in the way. So one of the most important things that happens when we rest productively is that we get out of the way so our soul can do what it needs to do. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, and I have my little notes here because I wanted to make sure to remember, is that it's time for you, when you rest, it's precious time for you to receive from your soul. Now, I know I've taught before about the interrupter rituals, right, that I talk about in my book, which are those intentional moments throughout the day where you pause and receive. Those are essential. This is different. This is when you're resting, whatever that looks like for you. Again, you don't even know it's happening, but because you're resting, because you're not trying to control or figure out or analyze or, push or resist, you're more open, you're more tender, right? Your soul can give to you so much more easily, which is why sometimes you find, like, after you take a shower or when you go take a walk or when you hang out with a friend or even when you go to like the bookstore or when you go do something that's just joyful for you and you're not even trying to figure out the problem, that you suddenly get the answer, right? So that's really important, that when you're resting productively, it's like those guardrails that we put unconsciously drop and your soul is so much more able to give to you. And I said that one already. The other thing about resting productively is that it gives your physical body an opportunity to catch up with all of the soul expansion that is happening. So remember, when you're on the spiritual path, what is the spiritual path about? It's, as I've shared before, it's this dance, right, between your soul that is eternally connected to the divine and you in your physical body, right? And your soul, it's like, or how do I say this? You are learning how to embody more of your soul's light, more of your soul's wisdom, more of your soul's radiance, right? More of your soul's divine solutions, more of your soul's abundance. It's like you're becoming this stronger light. You're becoming this light bulb that can hold more light. And of course, there are practices you can do, right? There's yoga poses, there's mantras you can chant, you have all sorts of tools you can do. And those are great. And one of the most important ones is creating regular productive rest, times where you can rest and you're not thinking about it and your body can do all the things it needs to do to make space for the light, right? Just like I said earlier, that example of the seed that you plant in the soil. What is happening to the seed? The seed is transforming, right? The seed is transforming so that it can turn into that tree or that flower. And it's the same thing for us. But again, if we're constantly digging up the seed and looking at it and messing with it and thinking, it's not growing fast enough, we mess up the process, right? And so productive rest allows that to happen. And so when you think of it that way, you realize, wait, rest is productive, rest is creative, rest is essential. And, I took a walk this morning, and often when I take walks, they're very intentional. I have my earbuds, I might be listening to a podcast or listening to some music or trying to think about my classes that I'm going to take or trying to have, intentional conversations with my soul, all sorts of things. And those are all valuable things. And sometimes, like today, even though I was all ready to listen to this podcast episode that I wanted to hear, I suddenly was like, oh, I just felt tired. Like I didn't want to hear it. And it wasn't resistance. It wasn't my ego. It was my soul saying, just have a restful walk. And so I didn't put my earbuds. I just walked and looked at the trees and looked at the birds and looked at the people that were walking their dogs and just kind of let my mind wander and didn't judge it. I wasn't like, okay, focus on your soul. What does your soul want to say? It was just like, just let it, I just noticed all these things. There was like a little kindergarten graduation happening and I saw that and I just didn't think about trying to solve any solution or even listen to what my soul was trying to say. And as I just allowed myself to walk, I could feel, I suddenly heard the phrase like you're emptying yourself. Like, oh, there was like an emptying happening. And I didn't need to control it. In fact, if I tried to control it, I would get in the way. And that's why I just needed to have that restful walk. And so it's the same for you, right? It's like that productive rest is essential. And the first time I learned this was several years ago. And I've shared this story before. I'll share it again, where I got sick. I got this really bad cold and it wasn't going away. Finally, I went to the doctor because up to that point, if I got a cold, I just drank tea, drank water, did vitamin C, whatever I needed to do. But this was like just kept going. And finally, when I had a fever, I was like, I think I need to go to the doctor. And I went and I had pneumonia. And this began this 3-year journey with pneumonia. And I remember that it was like they gave me antibiotics. I took the antibiotics. I got better. And then I went right into hustle mode again. And then I got sick again. Right. And this happened for 3 years over and over and over. It was like my soul knew, because this is the final teaching here, is that if you don't consciously, explicitly decide to productively rest, your soul will figure out a way to do that for you. And it's not because your soul, excuse me, is punishing you or doesn't love you or is impatient with you. It's the opposite. It's because your soul loves you so much and knows the deep prayer you have to share your unique medicine with the world. So your soul knows, like, okay, this is the only way. So that for me, I know those 3 years of recurring pneumonia, it was like my soul knew this is the only way she's going to get this lesson, because I was so wired to work really, really hard. Right. And the only way that I was going to finally learn this lesson was to get this illness that kept coming back. And that literally, when I would get it, I would literally have to walk slow, move slow. Like I couldn't do even like kind of quick moves because it would just stimulate this horrible cough. And I was incredibly upset. It wasn't like I was like, yay, I'm learning how to rest. I hated it. I was like, this sucks so badly. Why is this still happening? But I knew every time my soul was like, you need to learn, you need to learn that to slow down, to speed up, right? One of my core teachings now. And so it was in that 3-year journey where I was talking to my coach and just feeling really bad because I was like, oh, I still have to rest so much. I was writing my first book and I had to just during the day go lie down, and I hated it. I was like, oh, I felt so guilty. I was like, I'm going to fall behind. How am I ever going to finish this book? All of the things. And I just kept saying, it just feels so unproductive. Like it feels so unproductive to just have to stop and rest. And then my coach, she was like, what if rest was the most productive thing you could do? And I was like, just like kind of hit me like lightning, right? There's times where you hear something, whether somebody else is saying it to you, it's like she was channeling my soul, or you hear it in your mind. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my soul speaking to me, saying right now, rest is the most productive thing you can do. And so that is the importance of productive rest. It's not naive. It's not indulgent. It's not lazy. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy because of all the resistance we have, as I shared earlier. Because if we heard over and over and over, don't just sit there, do something, in whatever words people used around you, you're literally going against programming. But what happens when you don't just sit there and you just do something, where you're constantly doing, you never listen to your soul? It's actually laziness of the brain to constantly do. It's like it doesn't require your brain to think differently at all, or strategically at all, or boldly at all, or courageously at all, or radically at all. It just requires your brain to think the same thoughts over and over and over and over and over. But to stop and say, I remember seeing this bumper sticker once, or a button or something, don't just do something, sit there. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so much harder. That is so much more radical. That requires so much more work on my part, and the good type of work, so much more soulfulness for me to pause, to listen, to rest, and just lay the problem aside. That takes so much more courage. So, really, that is what you're learning. That's what I'm learning. That's how we will create. That's how you will create what you're here to create. That's how you will do the contributions that you're here to contribute to the world. That's how you will, you know, share your unique soul's medicine with the world. That's how it happens. So let's do a really quick inner journey. Before that, I want to remind you that this month's free masterclass, I didn't do one last month, but this month, the free masterclass is how to boldly share your soul's medicine. I know I always say this, I'm so excited, but I am so excited to teach this masterclass because there's so many important teachings that are coming through, because your medicine is so needed in the world. This is a free 90-minute masterclass. The replay will be available for a limited time. I will put the link in the description of this video. And also, if you're not signed up for my newsletter, do that. Oh, I'm so glad you love the birds in the background. Because that's the way to stay on top of all the events that I have upcoming, and all of the teachings and free resources and all of that. All right, so let's go ahead and tune in. Oh, and afterwards, I'm going to pull a guardian angel card, maybe two for everybody. Take some cleansing breaths. Feel the earth underneath you and welcome your soul. Of course, you know that your soul is always with you, but there's something really powerful that happens when you consciously and explicitly welcome your soul. You say, thank you, soul, beautiful soul. I welcome you. I welcome your guidance. And we're just going to ask this question, maybe two questions. First question, beautiful soul, what block do I have to resting productively? We all have them, so there's nothing to be ashamed of. But it's like, what is my greatest block to resting productively? And let your soul's answer fill your heart, whether you hear it yet or not. And then the final question is, what will I be able to create when I allow myself to rest productively? Again, and you can bring your hands to your heart like I'm doing if that helps you, because this is not coming from your intellect. You're not trying to be like, what's the answer? No, you're asking your soul to give you the answer. And your soul always answers, whether you hear the answer now or you hear it later when you're resting. That might happen. So the question again is, beautiful soul, what will I be able to create when I allow myself to rest productively? Again, what will I be able to create when I allow myself to rest productively? And so, taking some deep cleansing breaths, thank your soul and feel your soul thanking you, because your soul is always eager to talk to you, is always eager to help. And again, remember, if you didn't hear the answer, it will come at just the right time. And if you did hear the answer and now you're doubting it, or you're like, wait, did I make that up? Was that really my soul? Ask your soul to send you signs. Say, beautiful soul, I heard you, but you know me and you know my ego structure. Please send me ongoing validation. Send me signs through my dreams, through animals, through songs, through other people, through books, through whatever, music. Send me signs to keep reminding me of the answer you gave me. I'm trying to remember. Oh gosh, I remember the first question and answer came to me very clearly. It said, when I asked that question, what is my biggest block to resting productively? And I just felt a feeling like it was almost like a little panic. And it was like, oh my gosh, my biggest block, which I would have never said, was parts that are afraid to really feel my soul's love for me, which, right, is kind of like, why would I be afraid of feeling my soul's love for me? I'm not really afraid. It's the ego structure that is afraid, right? Because our soul's love is so magnificent, is so healing, is so empowering, that it just immediately takes us away from the influence of our ego. And the ego is deadly afraid of that. All right, so let's pull from these gorgeous guardian angel cards. Let's pull a card. And we're just going to ask our guardian angels, right? Those beautiful divine beings of love, right? This is beyond any religious dogma, or all spiritual paths are welcome here, right? Because the divine cannot be limited to one spiritual path, right? So here we go. What are the guardian angels, your guardian angels? What is their message for you about resting productively? Let's see, oops, this one's coming out. Beautiful. The right path. You're not blocked. You're exactly where you need to be. Know that this is the right path to what you desire. It's just being delivered differently than you expected. I'm going to read that again. You are not blocked. You're exactly where you need to be. Know that this is the right path to what you desire. It's just being delivered differently than what you expected. Look at that. Here we go. There we go. All right. So remember, this was about resting productively. So when you rest, there's going to be more messages about this, right? That you are on the right path. This reminds me of the last masterclass, right? When I was teaching that when we think we're stuck and your soul's like, you're not stuck. You're actually on the right path. This reminds me of that. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next week for episode number 94. We're getting close to 100. And I look forward to seeing you in this month's masterclass. And if you want to sign up for a free breakthrough consultation, I would love, love, love to talk to you and help you get clarity on all this. Bye, everyone.